Let's go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. Welcome to Building Independent Political Power. Who's excited about that? All right, so we have a very big discussion planned for this breakout workshop. My name is Daniel Espinosa. I am with an organization called People's Action, which is a network of local and state people power organizations from across the country who are working to advance a racial and economic justice agenda. And I am the moderator for this breakout. All right. So there are a lot of exciting ideas and opinions about how we should continue to build the political revolution that we've been talking about so far at this conference, right? Yeah. All right. And this particular breakout session is designed to deepen that conversation about how we continue to build political power as people. In particular, we want to focus on the role of permanent, lasting people's organizations and how they can do that. And so we have an incredible panel today for you of organizations, activists, and representatives from the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign. And they are going to share their perspectives from a local, state, and national perspective on this topic. So on this panel we have Bob Masters, who is the co-founder and national co-chair of a fast-growing third political party, the Working Families Party. Give it up for Bob Masters. We have Amanda Weaver, who is the director of Reclaim Chicago, which is a political strategy from a set of people's organizations in Chicago that's making big change here. Give it up for Amanda. We have Elisheva Johnson, who is an organizer from another people's organization in Michigan called Michigan United and Michigan People's Campaign. Give it up for Elisheva from Kalamazoo. We've got Larry Stafford. He was the director of another people's organization in Maryland, Progressive Maryland. Give it up for Larry Stafford. And from another great M state, the state of Maine, we have Genevieve Lysen, who is the lead organizer for Maine People's Alliance. Give it up for Jen Lysen. And then we've got two wonderful representatives who are here with us from Bernie Sanders 2016. We have Aturuo Carmona, who is the Deputy Political Director for the campaign. And we have Mr. Richard Eskow, who is a radio host of the Zero Hour and has been the main speechwriter for Bernie Sanders with us on the panel. Give it up for Richard Eskow. Great, so great energy in this room. And like I said, we want to use this session to really surface kind of big questions and even tensions that there are about how we continue to build political power and particularly translate the movement that's happening into permanent, lasting organizations to affect change. So we're going to hear presentations from these great panelists, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A and discussion from the whole group here. We want to hear what your questions are and what you're thinking about back in your states and your cities where you live and how you want to get involved and what's happening. So first, before I do that, I'm going to hand it off to one more person on our panel who's going to give us some more sort of historical context and set of questions that we want to hear. And his name is Mr. Miles Mogulescu. Miles is a film producer and entertainment attorney. He's been a regular writer for the Huffington Post for 8 years now, since the Huffington Post began. And he's a lifelong progressive activist who's been involved in thinking about people's organizations for a long time. So give it up for Mr. Miles Mogulescu.
Thank you. I want to start out with a shout out to all the organizations that sponsor this People's Summit, and for all the groups on this panel. Let's hear for all of them. You've done incredible work to keep hope alive during recent years of conservative and neoliberal ascendancy. And next, I want to ask everyone in this audience, are you ready to continue the political revolution for as long as it takes? Well, that's what this panel is about. It's about making a permanent revolution. I hope the Sanders campaign doesn't go the way of Occupy, which had an impact but disappeared. We need permanent organizations to drive the permanent revolution. When I was a child, I got the honor long time about the prospects for a massive progressive movement to bring progressive change to this country and the world. The past 3 decades, I'd say the past 3 decades, have been a period of conservative and neoliberal ascendancy in which the left has largely been on the defensive. My hope is that we may be entering a new era of potentially rapid progressive change, like the progressive era of the early part of the 20th century, like the New Deal era of the 30s, like the era of upheaval in the 60s. These things go in cycles. Sometimes change is slow, and then all of a sudden it becomes fast. And these cycles go in American history often in 30 to 40-year cycles. And I believe we're entering the next cycle. And the best evidence of that is the remarkable success of Bernie's campaign and the movements that it revealed. The 12 million votes, over 8 million donations, over $220 million, tens of thousands of volunteers making calls, knocking on doors. But this is also a period of great danger, indicated by Donald Trump's frightening success. As the socialist Rosa Luxemburg said early in the century, in the 20th century, the choice may be socialism or barbarism, or at least social democracy or barbarism. The question for this session is the following. Do we already have the organizational forms to meet this movement moment? Or do we need to add some new organizational forms? Can existing progressive organizations scale up in size and scope to meet the challenges of this new era? My own dream or hope, and I don't know if it's possible, is that a mass progressive socialist, social democratic organization with millions of members in towns, cities, states, campuses throughout the nation will arise from the energy that was revealed by the Sanders campaign. It might, or might not, be a national organization with chapters in neighborhoods, towns, cities, states, workplaces, high schools, college campuses. It would want people for office, from dog catcher, the city council, the state legislature, to Congress. It would have an inside-outside strategy. In addition to electoral campaigns, we would carry out mass issue campaigns, including mass demonstrations, and where appropriate, even nonviolent civil disobedience. It's not just Mitch McConnell who needs to look out his window to see a million mobilized citizens. If Hillary's the next president, she needs the same, supporting her if she does the right things, and protesting if she backslides into corporate centrism or needless regime change wars. And if, God forbid, Donald Trump is the next president, we may need to be in the streets, putting our bodies literally in the gears. Richard Eskow over here, I think, suggested when we had lunch a few weeks ago that maybe the minimum dues would be, take a guess, $27? You've heard that before. But just think, if 100,000 Bernie supporters joined for $27, that would be $2.7 million. It would finance hiring organizers and getting offices. If 1 million joined, that would be $27 million, which would finance a huge amount of organizing. We don't have a parliamentary system in this country, so it's hard to have third parties. If this were Europe, we might be able to form something like Podemos, Spain, which may actually get more votes in the next election than the Social Democratic Party, or Syriza in Greece. So it would have to be kind of a quasi-political party, not a third party, which I don't believe is practical given the nature of American politics. But it won't be easy. So here's some questions for the panel to address. Should a new national national organization be initiated out of the millions of supporters and tens of thousands of volunteers as part of Bernie's campaign? Or should it be formed from a coalition of existing organizations, like many of the organizations on this panel and sponsors of this conference? Or should we let 1,000 flowers bloom without a lot of national
we can't hear you in the back.
Excuse me?
Can you speak up?
Louder.
Or should we just let 1,000 flowers bloom without much national coordination? Some sub-issues for the panelists. What is the relationship between national and state organizing and national organizing? Is the problem for the progressive movement too much central organization or not enough? Next, how do we deal with top-down, bottom-up issues to ensure democratic accountability? Third, what is the relationship between electoral politics and direct action politics? Fourth, how do we build organizations which reflect the racial, ethnic, and gender diversity of this country? And finally, what is the role of Bernie Sanders personally, including his personal leadership role, if any, going forward? And who gets access to his campaign database, which has an incredible amount of information that would be valuable to a lot of movements? Let me close with a quote from Jane Sanders being interviewed by Rachel Maddow on MSNBC, or as I like to call it, MSNB Clinton. Or as John Nichols told me last night, MSDNC. But anyway, Rachel asked, now that Senator Sanders has this massive national, indeed international profile, do you see an organization being formed out of the Sanders Center's movement that has sprung up around the campaign? This is what Jane had to say. Yes, that's always been the intent. I mean, as he said right from the beginning, it's been a two-pronged approach. The most important thing is not electing Bernie president. The most important thing is starting a political revolution. Joseph Hill said, don't mourn, organize. But to organize, you need organization. We need to scale up organizationally to meet this moment. And people on the panel will talk about some of the ways we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Miles. So I'm going to turn it over to Bob Master from the Working Families Party, which is a third party in the United States and is actually having a lot of success at the local and state level. We want to hear about that. Give it up for Bob.
Thanks, Daniel. I also, just before I get started, just want to mention that in addition to my Working Families Party hat, I am the political director for the Communications Workers of America in the Northeast. And I know that, don't clap, we don't have enough time. I know that many of you helped us picket Verizon wireless stores across the country and helped us win a strike of 39,000 workers across the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic against the 15th largest corporation in the country, and we're very, very grateful for that. I want to start quickly by saying that I think it's very easy and important to talk about a political revolution, but I think we should stop for a second and think of what it actually means to make a political revolution on the scale that we're talking about. Think about the level of political power that we have to achieve to win the kinds of victories at the scale of the Civil Rights Act or the Voting Rights Act or the Wagner Act or Medicare. It's an enormous amount of actual political power. It won't happen just through electoral action. You will need a mass movement. But at the end of the day, if that's what we're talking about, if we're talking about having the power to address the issues of our time, whether it's racial injustice or economic injustice, the power of Wall Street, climate disaster, we have to actually have elected enough people who will pass that legislation against the opposition of the most powerful forces in our society. And I think that we've got to keep that in mind as we think through what we're doing. Trying to build some of that power has been the mission of the Working Families Party for nearly 20 years. And what we believe is that the lessons of the last 18 months are, I think, show us that there's an opportunity to tap into a level of energy and enthusiasm that we haven't seen, as Miles suggested in his opening comments. So I want to step back for a quick second and just say that, tell you a little bit about the Working Families Party. We were founded in 1998. We have organized state parties in 13 states and a membership across the country, 87% of whom voted to endorse Bernie Sanders in an online referendum last fall. We are structured as a coalition of labor organizations, of community organizations like Citizen Action, which is a People's Action affiliate, New York Communities for Change, Make the Road Action Fund, which is an immigrant rights groups, and others, along with the involvement of progressive individuals who are not affiliated. And at the root, our strategy is all about pushing, pulling, especially frightening the Democratic Party to the left, helping to elect good guys, and like Bernie did, running primary challengers against corporate Democrats on a platform of economic justice, racial justice, and climate justice. And we do that by combining issue campaigns and electoral campaigns that are closely linked. In New York City, where we're strongest, we have a pretty powerful example. A decade ago, we had a billionaire mayor and a city council that was controlled by real estate interests and county bosses. Now we have a progressive mayor and a progressive majority on the city council that was able to elect a former SEIU 1109 staffer, first Latino-American Speaker of the City Council, Melissa Mark Viverito, to lead our entire City Council. And it happened because in 2007, we began a program of training and working with candidates who would run. We surprised ourselves by winning 7 out of 9 races that year, and then built on that in 2013 to the point where we had literally a majority of the City Council on our side. It's not just New York. One of our newer chapters, for example, in Wisconsin had municipal elections the same day as the presidential primary. We ran a very strong challenge against the county executive, much like the work that was done by Reclaim and others here in Chicago. We lost the county exec race, but won a significant number of seats on the city council in Milwaukee, and we're now poised to pass a $15 an hour minimum wage. Now, quickly to try to answer some of Miles' questions, my own view is I think it's maybe overly ambitious and possibly counterproductive to try to form an entirely new organization. What we've learned in the work in the party over the last 20 years is that the challenges of building political unity and democratic structure and accountability and an internal culture that helps us function at the high level is really, really hard. And given how heterogeneous and decentralized the Bernie campaign has been, it might be a bridge too far. But I agree that we need to come out of this moment with something new, and I think it means convening a coordinating committee of many of the organizations that were part of the Bernie campaign, that want to build a political revolution, even some who weren't necessarily part of the Bernie campaign, to continue the work forward both on the issue side and in the electoral side. I think we need to use the next 2 years as kind of a ramp up to making that political revolution in 2018. We need to pick a few issues in 2017, run national campaigns, break up the big banks, end the school-to-prison pipeline, climate justice, where we unite all of these organizations around big issue campaigns at the same time as we're recruiting thousands of people in 2017 to run for local office, and ramping up to 2018 when we nationalize the congressional election in the way that the Tea Party did in 2010. In 2010, they made the election a referendum on socialized medicine, on big government, and Barack Obama. We need to make the 2018 election a referendum on economic, racial, and climate justice. And we need to be clear here. I'm going to wrap it up in 1 second. There's a lot more I can say, but let me just conclude by saying that we need a very concrete plan to tap into the energy unleashed by Bernie. We need a concrete plan to continue the narrative that Bernie articulated this past year by mounting these coordinated issue campaigns that polarize politics in our direction. And we need well-developed state-based infrastructure, supplemented and energized by the millions of young people activated by Bernie, in order to run thousands of campaigns from every office, from school board to Congress, in order to win the power that we need to truly transform our society.
Thank you, Bob. That's a very inspiring vision. So we're going to have now from a couple of state and local organizations, starting first here in Chicago with Amanda Weaver from Reclaim Chicago.
which is a 501c4 organization that's a part of People's Action nationally, and National Nurses United, who are our host this weekend, and a major progressive labor organization. This partnership and organization has allowed community leaders who are students, mothers, fathers, pastors, community activists, and nurses to join in a fight on issue campaigns that range from ending mass incarceration in Cook County, Illinois, to fighting for clean jobs bill across the state. Leaders and organizers across our collective pair issue work with down-ballot strategy to elect grassroots leaders to electoral offices that will affect the winnability of our issues. So Reclaim was born out of the long-time work of National Nurses United in the Midwest and the decades worth of issue-based community organizing in the Chicagoland area of
Can't hear ya.
the People's Lobby and the Collective. Reclaim's PAC was launched in the fall of 2015 with the mission of beginning to run and elect insurgent candidates. We started that cycle with the Chicago municipal election cycle. That winter, we protected the current 9 Progressive Caucus members and elected 3 challengers and expanded the Progressive Caucus from 9 to 12 seats. In light of the millions of dollars that were spent to defeat the loudest opposition to the mayor, organized people power took to the streets to not only protect, but to build the caucus in an immensely hostile environment to anything but to status quo, or what we call here in Chicago, rubber stamp politics. The 2015 municipal election cycle provided a few different growth opportunities for us organizationally. One, it absolutely energized our current and new base of membership. The 3 pickups to the caucus was huge, especially the election of Carlos Rosa in the 35th Ward, a leader with our organization and the first openly gay Latino elected to city council. This cycle also built a lot of tension, though, for our leaders. Tension in the sense that there was more left to be done. So we have a 50-seat council here in Chicago, and 12 seats in any math you possibly do is just not enough. So our leaders felt the tension that we needed to do more. And so that gets us to the infrastructure that has been built. So what we have done from there is we built a table and the structure of taking our current training and accountability of the organization, and we built a table of 30 leaders. Half of those people have declared that they're going to run in the next 3 years. Some of them have declared that if they're not running, they are going to find somebody in their community who is going to take out a bad actor. And every single person around this table has committed that they are going to build enough power to start changing the dynamics of their local neighborhood, whether there's a candidate there or not. So for me, when I talk about this table, and for Reclaim Chicago, this is what's at stake when we think about building a national organization or digging in with what is locally here. For me, over the last 10 years, the organizing that's been done here, and the table of 30 leaders who have declared responsibility for organizing power in their neighborhoods, half of those people taking the huge risk to challenge the established candidates throughout the state. So this burning moment has inspired many current leaders to take big risks, to make declarations of building neighborhood power to find local candidates, to lead issue campaigns that are going to put forth bold, progressive solutions to the problems we face as a state. And this energy has been built neighborhood to neighborhood here in Chicago and across the county. So the next steps for Reclaim is to continue to plug these new leaders into the monthly trainings, the meetings, and the issue work that we've been building up for nearly a decade, and the structure around that, to take the capacity of this moment and to grow it into issue work and insurgent candidates.
Great. Give it up for Amanda. Thank you. Exciting work happening here in Chicago. So we're going to take it across the other side of Lake Michigan now to this great state of Michigan, and give it up for Elisheva Johnson from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Hello, and thank you all for being here. Michigan People's Campaign is a 501c4 political organization dedicated to movement politics and being bold in this progressive movement. I'm on this panel because I 100% believe in this movement, and I know the importance of grassroots organizing.
Yeah.
We we have the opportunity within this movement to build real leaders through leadership development. In 2014, we talked to over 25,000 people at their doors and on phones. Our Fair Chances for All campaign fought and won in the fight against discrimination of folks with felony backgrounds. In that campaign, we increased turnout by 60 to 80% in communities where the issues was hitting hard, where voters came out and spoke for themselves. We also won 4 seats on that city commission. Right now, we understand that the way to win is through leadership development. And this is our year of leadership development. We are now working to abolish the school-to-prison pipeline. So the way we did it was we asked our members to hold these house parties in their homes, invite their friends and families to talk about issues that were affecting their communities. Through that, we realized that children were at the forefront of most of these issues, and that most of the issues that were being hardly and widely felt were family issues or centered around families. We wanted to see change. So we found out through all of the many research meetings and house parties that the way to do it was taking our members and building them up to actually run for these seats. Right now, what we've realized is that if we want to abolish the school-to-prison pipeline, we need to start at the front end, which is through building relationships with teachers and teacher unions. Then we move to the middle, where we have built a team of folks, 2 people who are running for our school board seats. At the end of this pipeline, we have our prosecuting attorney, which whom is one of our members and leaders, which we've grown. We also talk about race. We're very explicit when we talk about race. And we think that it's important that all campaigns talk about the real issues, which is poverty.
That's right.
I am here today because I thoroughly believe that all of us can work today to abolish the school-to-prison pipeline. You can go back to your cities and build a team. The same way we do, through real, regular, everyday people. And I thank all of you for being here today.
Thank you. Great. Electing a Kalamazoo City Council on a racial justice agenda. That's what I'm talking about. All right. So now we're going to turn over to another M state. This is a feature of M states today. From the great state of Maine. Give it up for Genevieve Lysen.
Thanks, Daniel, and thank you all for being here. So I am Jen Lysen. I'm the lead organizer with Maine People's Alliance. We are a 501c4 and a 501c3 and a PAC. So we're able to do all kinds of advocacy, election, and issue organizing. We have 32,000 membership households in the state of Maine. 1 in 13 households receives our newsletter. We're multi-issue. We work on healthcare, affordable housing, raising wages, immigrant rights, tax fairness, and we work on elections. We have a chapter-based model, so we have 4 areas of the state where there are pockets or concentrations of our members who get together to work on issues and elections. But our overarching focus, like Michigan United, is on leadership development, on developing skills in everyday people to make sure that they have the power to affect the change that they need to see in their everyday lives. I just want to go back to a quote that I heard from one of the previous speakers. So to be organized, you need organization. And I think that's really key to what we're talking about today on this panel. I think we do have the ability to scale up existing groups to capture the energy of this election cycle. I don't want to see another national email list organization, frankly. I think that we have the ability to direct people's energy to groups and states with real capacity and staff and leaders on the ground. I think that's what we need to do next. So at Maine People's Alliance, as a permanent power-building organization, besides our issue campaigns, as we said, lately we've been focusing on recruiting and developing our own members to run for political office. It's a heck of a lot easier to get our own people in power and then get our issue agenda accomplished than trying to influence those that are already there. We've been, hammering. One example would be in the city of Lewiston. We've been hammering on the affordable housing issue for 30 years. That's where we were founded, and we've been pushing mayors and city councilors for literally decades to improve code enforcement and then housing conditions for our downtown residents. But it wasn't until last year when we ran, I campaign managed for Ben Chin, a mayoral candidate in Lewiston. And though Ben was not victorious in the end, Mayor McDonald was a popular incumbent. We lost in a runoff election where we had come in first in the first election, and then narrowly were defeated in December. Also a very strange month for an election. But with Ben, we ran a slate of progressive city council candidates, and we won a progressive majority in Lewiston for the first time in decades. So we've helped to usher in this, new progressive majority, and we now have the ability to craft policies and pass them. We are learning now what it is to govern. We've already added a code enforcement position into the city budget, and we are forming an immigrant working group to look at immigrant and refugee issues in Lewiston. Also through Ben's campaign, we developed 200 new volunteer skills when it comes to doing electoral organizing. And then on the third front, we changed the narrative in the city of Lewiston. For decades, folks have blamed tenants for the downtown housing stock, and our mayor, Mayor McDonald, has sided with landlords saying that they're just trying to do their best and do their jobs, but these, tenants are just really keeping the buildings really, decrepit and messy, though they don't own them. But through this campaign, Ben was relentless in our messaging when it came to who was to blame. When people said stop saying the words corporate slumlord, we said no. And through that, thank you. So Mayor McDonald now has announced his intention to take on slumlords and hold them accountable in the city of Lewiston. No one would believe me, a year ago if I said that this was what was going to unfold. And I just feel really, proud that Ben and our campaign team sort of stuck to our guns on who we knew was to blame. So in running our own, members for office like Ben, we're able to, win governing power. We're able to change the narrative and build our organizations and our people's skills through that. One thing I was asked to address on this panel was the relationship with local Democratic committee members. And frankly, it's tense. At caucus, there was a clear divide between, MPA members on the Bernie side and the establishment Democratic Party folks on the Hillary side. And there's been, an ongoing tension. They've been supporting middle-of-the-road moderate Democrats for so long, it scares them when we run single members and immigrants for office. They seemingly operate in the political world as it is, where money, education, class background, gender are all barriers to political involvement. I think it's our responsibility to challenge them and create a new political reality. And another way to get them going in the right direction is to get one of our members elected as their new chair, which we did. And then finally, really why we're all here today, I want to talk about, how the Bernie Sanders campaign has energized so many young people, so many folks who have not voted one time in their lives in Maine until the caucuses, and what I'm most interested in sort of thinking and talking about moving forward is how do we capture that energy? How do we bring those folks into Maine People's Alliance? How do we get some of those folks to run for office themselves? MP has been around for 32 years and we are not going anywhere. Our work this election cycle, was not about one candidate or issue, but rather an opportunity to build our organization and bolster our issue work. And in the next year, we're going to run 40 candidates for local offices, and we're also going to win back our state house and our governor's office, and we're going to get 170,000 people in the state of Maine a raise on November of this year when we raise the minimum wage. So last thing I'd say is, I hope the Bernie supporters in states do connect to power building organizations like MPA and the others we've heard from today. I think that is how we continue the political revolution. Thank you.
All right. Okay, then we have one more speaker from a people's organization in a state, and that's from the great state of Maryland. You'd have Larry Stafford from Progressive Maryland.
So, just following all of that has just got me just filled with energy. I don't know if anybody else really feels that right now, because just being a part of this summit here, getting to see all of your faces, the energy in this room even right now, it's just giving me so much hope and so much life for what is possible.
Yeah.
It really is. So just a little bit about me. I started out in community organizing, being a member of the community, actually. I started as a student in high school, and someone who had faced police violence very early in my life, having police officers point guns right in my face and tell me very explicitly that they were going to kill me if I did not do what they said. So all these things are very personal for me, and I came into organizing as a member early on of ACORN, an organization that once existed and had a lot of power in this country. I got active with the chapter in my county, in Prince George's County, Maryland, right next to DC. And they taught me about organizing, how it was a philosophy of which we take those most affected by problems, those most impacted by problems, whether they're the single mothers raising children, working 3 jobs, whether it's students burdened by college debt, but taking the people most affected and building a movement of those people to change their conditions. And so I came into Progressive Maryland with that. Now I'm the executive director for Progressive Maryland, and that is the work that we're carrying out in the state of Maryland. Thank you. So Progressive Maryland, we've been around for about 10 years in our current form. We started off as Progressive Montgomery in the state. We're an organization with over 125,000 members and activists throughout our state on our email list, and we're working to organize local chapters where our members can take leadership at the local level. We also are a coalition organization in a sense, because I think one of the answers to this question is that it doesn't take just one organization to get the job done. It's going to take an entire movement. And that movement will encompass many organizations that fill many facets of what we need to do. And so we have 18 affiliated organizations in our state, including labor groups, faith-based organizations, and civic groups, spanning the wide spectrum of the progressive movement within the state of Maryland. We're also a membership organization in the sense that if you live in Maryland, anybody from Maryland here? Hey, there we go. If you live in Maryland, you can be a member of Progressive Maryland and take leadership within our org, being a local chapter leader or running to be a member of our state board as well. And so we've had victories in terms of advancing a campaign for a fight for a $15 minimum wage in Montgomery County. You know, I got to have the experience of being someone who had once been brutalized by the police in our state, of helping to lead the effort to pass police reform in the state of Maryland and hold police accountable. And also, we had a victory in getting, transitioning like how our politics work at the local level, because even at the local level, as much as at the national level, we see super PACs and big money influence in politics, it happens at the county and city level as well, don't get me wrong. And so at the local level, we passed public financing of elections in Montgomery County. And so we've had successes as an organization, and but this particular moment provides all of us on this panel with such opportunity to move forward and build power in a way like perhaps never seen before. And we have to understand centrally that we have very organized opposition. Corporate power in this country did not get there by accident. I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone. They're very organized and they have a very deliberate plan for what they want to do to this country and what they have done and accomplished in this country. And so we must be equally organized in this country. We must be equally mobilized and motivated to advance our goals. And so I don't see anybody in the room tonight that looks like they're going away. So we can't let this moment slip past, and I think that's clear. And we can't just let this election be the end point of this. Right. So we must take our efforts, combine them, refocus them, and continue this movement in a very organized, very deliberate, very strategic path forward. And to do that, we must build local leaders. Leadership is critical. Each person in this room has the potential to be a leader in this movement, and is a leader in this movement, frankly. And I want to just give a special shout out to one of our leaders in this room who just got just got elected by the students to be the student member for Prince George's County Public Schools Board of Education. I want you to stand up for him. He's 18 years old, a student at Parkdale High School, and an example of what we need to be doing in cultivating leaders throughout this country, bringing them into organization where they can develop their power and their skills in order to change this system that we have in this country. Our educational system, our economic system, our criminal justice system as well. And so Juwan told me the other day that he now wants to run for the actual seat for the school board District 3 in Prince George's County. And we're going to help him do that. We need to do that all across this country with hundreds and thousands of Juwan blockers and others moving this movement forward. So thank you all.
All right. All right, thank you. So now we have an opportunity to actually hear from the Sanders campaign itself, the two representatives that we have here, and to get their direct thinking and reactions to the panel of organizations who are building independent political power, and hear their thoughts about it. So give it up for Aturuo Carmona and Richard Eskow.
Thank you, Daniel. My name is Aturuo Carmona, and I serve the campaign as the Deputy Political Director, charged with overseeing Latino, LGBT, AAPI, and many other constituencies. You know, when I was initially interviewed and offered the position in the fall of last year, we were in a very different place. When you looked at the type of support we had from Latinos and other communities of color, we were in a difficult spot. Our communities needed to really get in the ring, and I recognize the moment and the great opportunity. And I recognize the fact that communities of color really stood to benefit disproportionately from the political revolution that Senator Sanders called for. I believed in what Senator Sanders has been saying, that this campaign is more than just about an election. This is about a political and social revolution leading real change from the bottom up. And so as we engage with communities, with leaders, with organizations, the political revolution has become a reality and will continue to become a reality as this campaign continues up through the convention. So this campaign, one of the things that I've seen, and I think many of us have seen, is that progressives can win. That when people come together around a vision and a program with unwavering values, when we empower young people, when we empower undocumented immigrants, when we empower the LGBTQ community, when we empower real progressives, working families committed to fighting a political, media, and corporate establishment, that we in fact can win. Now we all know that there are real challenges to building that progressive coalition. And we were talking about this with some of the colleagues here before this panel started. And one of those challenges has been around how do we unify progressive white communities and white working class communities and working class communities of color. Now I believe that this campaign has begun to open huge doors around that major challenge. And we have shown through our experience that when you talk to Latinos about political corruption, when you talk to Latinos about the inequalities happening in this country with the truth, when you unshackle our communities from the lobby of special interests and you speak to them with real honesty, they will lean in our direction and will support our causes. We've engaged Latino families with the truth on immigration, political corruption, and they, by far and large, we won the Latino vote in many critical states, and in many others we virtually tied the political establishment. We also saw this with AAPI communities when we talked to families and students and entrepreneurs about Wall Street and about breaking up the banks and providing greater access to capital and lowering student debt. We actually won AAPI voters across many states in this country. When we talk to LGBT communities to really analyze politicians based on their records, not on their rhetoric, we actually won LGBT communities up and down this country. So time and time again, we've learned that when we take away these tools that the establishment uses to manipulate our communities in many ways, we can in fact win the hearts and minds of communities of color. So I think that that's going to be a critical piece as we begin to look towards the future and how we create a sustainable movement and how we create that necessary coalition between whites and communities of color in this country. Now let's be honest, we did have some bumps on the road. There's no doubt that we had amazing victories, but we also had some challenges. And so we've learned very valuable information about how we make this coalition happen. I know we'll strengthen the movement for many years to come. And as this campaign continues to evolve in the next few weeks and months. I now believe that there is a path to bringing these working families, Latinos, Black, Asians together. Now let's look a little bit ahead. The political revolution must be focused on defeating Donald Trump and Republicans down the ballot, fighting a Democratic platform that reflects the core values of the Sanders campaign and its grassroots support, defending the role of government by encouraging the next generation of progressive leaders, and transforming the Democratic Party. Now, while the political revolution starts with defeating Donald Trump, the senator is highly committed to serving a major role, not only in that effort, but in also transforming the Democratic Party itself. He's laid out, as many of you heard this week, some very clear objectives to not only transforming the Democratic Party politically, but also in terms of holding them accountable on a set of policy priorities that he's outlined throughout this campaign. He's also laid out a clear pathway towards the future that requires us to have a 50-state strategy that has that really inspires a new generation of elected officials at the state, at the local, and at the federal level to really join the fight for taking over our democracy. Now, I'll just conclude with this. We believe that this is just the beginning in a long and arduous process of transforming America. A fight that will continue tomorrow, next month, and next year, and into the future. And bringing our diverse communities together will be a critical way, and this campaign will continue to set a path forward in how we can make this happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aturuo. And now Mr. Richard Eskow, Bernie's speechwriter.
Before I start, and I hope you can hear me, a couple of quick clarifications. Number one, as of Friday, I'm not with a campaign anymore, so I'm back to writing on my own, and I have a radio show. But number two, and I think anyone who knows Bernie knows this, Bernie is Bernie's state speechwriter. And that's part, and I'll get to that point in a second because I think it's important. But first let me ask you guys a question, because you guys have been sitting patiently. If I asked you, what do we want, would you say revolution in return? Yeah. If I asked, when do we want it, would you say now? Yeah. So what do we want? Revolution. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Revolution. When do we want it? Now. You see, that's called call and response. The call goes out and the people answer. The call goes out and the people answer. Bernie put the call out and the people answered. When I met with him first to talk about this, it was in March of last year. And nobody, I had a feeling there was something to this. And it was an instinctive feeling, but it was also, if you read the polling on how people feel about Social Security, how people feel about Wall Street, how people feel about Medicare. If you look at what they're now calling the deaths of despair in the white middle class, if you're looking at the tragic murders of innocent young people in the black community, if you're looking at the disenfranchisement in the Latino community, I had a sense, but nobody had a sense that it would go like this. But the call goes out and the people answer. Now, why? Because, I'm a little, let me put it this way. Chris Hedges wrote a book called War is a Force That Gives Us Meaning. I think everybody's looking for meaning. I think for people like us, people in this room, revolution is a force that gives us meaning.
Yes.
So, and I actually asked Chris once, Hedges, at one point, I said, you've interviewed a lot of revolutionaries around the world, and I've noticed in people, I've traveled in South America, and people who are really putting their lives on the line for a cause, there's a certain serenity that comes over them. To think of that picture of that guy facing the tank in Tiananmen Square. He was at peace. And I asked Chris, why do you think that is? Because he's studied so many revolutionaries. He said, because they've chosen. They've chosen. They made their decision, and there's a serenity, there's a strength that comes with that. So I guess I would call on everybody here to remind ourselves that we need to choose, and we need to keep choosing, and we need to choose to be an example for others of the strength and serenity that comes when you decide to give yourself to a cause. Now, the name of this panel, just to remind everybody, is Building Independent Political Power. Independent political power. So, I guess I would say, we talked a lot about electoral politics. I really like something Roseanne DeMoro said last night when she said, an election is not a movement. We're building a movement. But she said, an election can be a moment and movement. So if we think of this as a way of life, and the elections, they're like Christmas tree lights, the way of life is the string, the elections are the little lights that come up from time to time. I also like something that Rosario Dawson said about the fact that we have to do this even if Bernie had won. That our assignment would still be the same, to mobilize, to fight. So I guess I would put that out. We can be in the Democratic Party the way the preachers used to say to be in the world, right? In it, but not of it. For those of you who choose to fight the electoral fight through the democratic process, I would say be in it, but not of it. And I guess I would just close by saying this. I always go back, we've had a lot of talk about databases. I hear a lot about who's going to get Bernie's email lists and who's going to get that stuff is tremendously important, but without a message, without the heart of this revolution that we're trying to fight, that database begins to degrade. The moment the inspiration is lost, the moment the feeling is lost, the moment the sense of community, the moment the sense of trying to build a better world is lost. So when we think about building institutions of independent political power, I guess I would just ask you, remember the message. Remember the community. Remember your brothers and sisters who are in this fight with you, because the message begets the movement begets the community begets the change. Thank you.
What do we want? When do we want it? Now! All right. So now it's going to be your turn. So if you're sitting there and you've got a question that you want to ask the panel about this topic, or even a statement that you want to make, as long as it's a reaction that you have, it's brief, a minute or two, then now's the time. But here's the catch. There's one catch, which is you've got to come to the mic. So go ahead and come on up. All right. Go ahead. Maybe you want to say your name, where you're from.
Okay, my name is Martha Pincus, and I'm from Fox Point, Wisconsin.
Speak up.
My name is Martha Pincus, and I'm from Fox Point, Wisconsin. I'm wondering what is going on in the platform formation for the convention. I have heard that there's not much conciliatory behavior from the Clinton people. Is this true? And if it is, why?
As many of you know, the platform development process has begun. Right now they're in a listening phase. They've had 2 hearings so far, one in DC and one in Phoenix, just yesterday as a matter of fact. And they're hearing testimonies. The decision-making phase process and the phase of drafting it is not yet there. So we at this point really have no comment in terms of conciliation. As you have heard in the press, the senator has had conversations on this issue, but they're private. And at this point, there hasn't been a direct contentious process with the other side as far as we can report.
Thank you.
All right, so I have a lot to say, and it's not a question, so try to keep it under a minute. I am from Vermont. I just drove here the other night, and I'm going to run for the state legislature in my state. Thank you. So about a year and a half ago, I wrote a letter to the president, letting him know that I thought that we needed to involve the people more in the political process. And the response that I got was an automated response, and I was really upset considering the fact that the letter that I wrote was about bringing people in, and I got an automated response. So I was pretty upset. So I started forming an idea that eventually turned into a nonprofit that I started. But I'll tell you guys real briefly about what I discovered. I did a lot of research on how our government was formed and what the founders had initiated and what they tried to do. And the democratic republic that we have is based around a system of electing individuals to office. And when we elect those individuals, what happens is basically the proverbial bus just stops. We stop communicating with our elected officials, and they go off and start making decisions for themselves and their constituents and their wealthy donors. And what happens is they make these decisions, and then we look at them and we're like, why are you doing that? Why are you making decisions without talking to us? And essentially, what happens is we don't communicate with them. The reason their government is failing is that we're not talking to them and they're not listening to us. So what I discovered was that we needed to create a system that functions with the elected officials working for the people and communicating with them and listening to them. So the platform that I'm running on in Vermont is I want to run as a legislator who forms a weekly town hall when I'm not in session. And I go in and I talk to my town and my people, and I say, what do you guys need? What can I do? How can I help you? What can I do to make a difference? And then take that knowledge, that information that they provide to me, and just bring it to the State House and say, I have 7,000 people that feel this way about this topic.
Yeah, that's right. Great, thank you.
So the quote on my back is not a direct quote, but it's a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and it says that our government needs to be dynamic and reflect the times of those being governed under it. And essentially what Thomas Jefferson said is that every 19 years, the government needs to be re-examined because laws are not finite, and there's no such thing as a perfection when it comes to our government. It's us. And the Constitution starts with the 3 words, we the people. And in the Constitutional Convention in 1787, they harped over whether it should be we the people or we the states. But the thing they missed so importantly was the first word. It's we, us.
That's right.
I or me or anything, us.
Thanks, brother. I would just suggest that you got a lot of brothers and sisters here I'd like to come.
Thank you, sir.
Bernie's main tagline is we. I love it. So my name is Aiden Charles. I'm from Vermont as well. And,
all right.
And my question is, what avenue do you guys go to for leadership building? I'm working with a power building organization in Vermont, and the Michigan United is primarily based in the area. So I just wanted to ask what leadership avenues you guys usually go that we can share.
Who wants to take that?
Can I just clarify the question? Do you mean like what leadership positions within our? Okay, yeah, great. So first thing I'll say is People's Action does an incredible week-long training that you all should look up. You'll come back transformed. Second, Make People's Lives, we run trainings with our membership on at least twice a year. We do a huge convening with our top leaders that will do breakout sessions, and we call it our retreat, though it's mostly work. And then I think for particular, like every leader within my chapter has a particular leadership track where we use a tool called leadership development self-assessment, where we go over all of the different skills that there are in organizing and identify with that individual which are the ones that they want to work on in the next 18 months. And then we identify projects that will speak to those skills that they want to develop. So that's what we do in Maine.
All right, so ditto to what they do in Maine is what we're also looking to do in Maryland, so I won't repeat too much of that. But the other thing I'll add is also experience, because we need to pull people right into the front lines of this battle. And because experience is the ultimate teacher of, like how to lead, how to develop your vision, how to put forward a vision. It's so much that you can read in a book, You know, you can, you know, learn about it from someone telling you about it, but getting that experience and getting involved is a whole nother level as well. And so,
Yeah, all right. Good. We got time for just a couple more questions, so we could focus this to, we have questions, and particularly about the topic of how we build political power, and keep going.
Hi, my name is Curtis Anderson. I'm from Will County, about 45 miles southwest of here. And my question is, how can ranked choice voting help build political revolution?
Anybody got a thought on that?
I think it's a really important political reform. The problem with America is winner-take-all elections, and that's the difficulty of building alternative political movements. So changing that system, the way you said, is one of the most important political reforms we can build, and it should be done in localities, cities, states, eventually nationally, but it's a really important reform idea that will transform the country if it happens.
Okay.
Hey, my name is Layla. My question is, so I'm working right now in North Carolina trying to build independent political power, pushing for Black folks into some seats. And so I'm wondering, what are some downfalls or struggles or lessons that you learned along the way for other people that are trying to build IPOs to help us steer that? Thanks.
Great question. There's probably a few people who want to take a shot at that.
So at Michigan United, one thing that I'm really proud of us is that we do is that we go to our members and ask them what it is they need. And we weren't good at that at first. So that was a downfall before with us, is that we weren't meeting people where they are. We understand that it is important to, everyday regular folks. I was in a project in our city knocking on doors, and people had never had their doors knocked on and asked the question, what do you want to change in your community? So making sure that you're meeting your people where they are is the best thing. And then that inside of your organization, you're actually doing what you want to see happen out in your community.
Go ahead, Bob. Yeah, I would agree with that, of course. I think that, asking about the pitfalls, I hate to say this, but I feel like we routinely underestimate the amount of resources that it takes to play seriously for power. And I'll give you an example. We have a CWA activist in Nassau County who's on the Long Beach City Council. It's a small town on the South Shore of Long Island. He's running for the assembly. He's a telephone worker. He doesn't know people who work in corporate law firms. He doesn't know people, know all that many doctors if he doesn't know anything. He's got to raise $150,000 to $175,000 to run a credible race for New York State Assembly. He'd be I think he might be one of the first union members to serve in the New York State Assembly. So this battling for power is no joke, right? And so trying to figure out what a platform is, what the resources are going to be, who your allies are the unions going to be with you, are the community groups going to be with you? I think those are the kinds of things that I think all of us have wrestled with for 10, 20, 30 years in trying to build actual power, because the forces on the other side, the question of instrumental voting, I'm kind of agnostic on. It's clear beyond a shadow of a doubt, the most important fundamental reform of our political system that we need is public financing of elections, because at the end of the day, our guy from the telephone union has to raise $150,000 with no public money. And that is really hard, and it really tilts the playing field against him.
Yeah, that's right. Does anybody else have any others response to this? I think this is a super important question. Maybe one more?
Yeah, I think in terms of actually building organization, and you use the term IPO, a term we have in our organization is power before program. I think that there is a tendency to go out and hear a lot of different issues and try and create a platform and get to work on every issue that you hear about before you can actually deliver any victory on that because you haven't built the power to do so. So I think some of the pitfalls I've seen after the municipals, a lot of IPOs popped up in every ward in Chicago. And the ones that have succeeded are the ones that took the time to build the membership and build the people who are actually going to stick around and do the work before cutting or working on a whole platform that they yet couldn't deliver on and then disenfranchise the people who came in who were expecting something that couldn't be delivered on. So I think power before program is crucial.
Great.
I don't quite know how to frame this. I think I can look at this. But I started thinking when I was listening to the People's Alliance in Maine, out of Massachusetts. And so I guess I want you to tell us a little bit about the scary prospect of choosing. Do you support candidates or yeah, okay. Well, you've got this guy LePage as your governor. So I guess I want to know. I want to hear a little bit about like the choices that you made about supporting people. And I mean, we don't always want to be voting for the lesser of two evils, but we don't want the ticket split three ways. And so these assholes get in there for like 35% of the vote. You know. So I guess like how do we play that? Yeah, I don't. You got the question. You're shaking your head. Remain independent and not be always, or do sometimes we just have to just say, okay, we're going to stuck with these people for a while and build in other ways so that we can stop their influence or have the impact that they made overall on the policies that they are allowed to do while they're there. And I know Maine's very complicated in terms of very progressive and also pretty backwards in some places because I lived there for a while. So I guess that's, you know, it's focusing.
So I think I've got the question. So one of the things we do is endorsements. So you asked about political endorsements. We don't just endorse the lesser of two evils or the Democrat in the race, but our endorsements they carry weight. They mean we're going to work on your behalf. So that candidate better show us in our interview with our volunteers that they are going to fight for progressive values and that they're going to run a hard campaign and that they actually have a strategy to win. So one, making sure our endorsements really carry weight and that we're selective. We don't just endorse every Democrat on the ticket. Two, we have ranked choice voting on the ballot this year. So we are ballot. We're going to fix that. No more third-party spoilers for the governor's race. That'll be great. And then last, we are challenging the establishment Democrats in primaries. So, we are running our members against those folks who have been sort of the quote-unquote lesser of two evils. And in some cases, we're being victorious. We won 2 out of the 3 primaries that we took on just last Tuesday. And then even in the one that we didn't, we've moved the dialogue. That Democrat that now will be in that seat, contended with running against a single mother who was relentless in her pushing him, to the left. And as a result, he is going to govern differently.
Great.
I wanted to add something to that too, just quickly, which is obviously we're seeing now on the national level too, the issue of endorsement and is, endorsing Hillary and so on. I think it's important too to not be binary in our thinking about whoever does eventually come in, either to get the Democratic nomination or to win an office. I think, but to see that as just another point in the process. And, most of all, as an independent movement, don't be afraid to make them afraid. Don't be afraid to exert pressure. Don't get sentimentally attached to a candidate or a party or a personality, but view that election as just one decision tree point where once that person gets in, you have more work to do.
Right. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to make a quick announcement for any of you that live in the DuPage County area or the Chicago suburbs that aren't part of a volunteer network already.
DuPage County for Bernie Sanders will be meeting next Sunday at the College of DuPage cafeteria between 1 and 3 p.m. We'll be discussing a proposed slate of local candidates that we want to support, as well as an upcoming conference for all the leftist and progressive groups in the areas. We know that Chicago's been getting a lot of attention. Well, we have a big progressive movement in DuPage County that we're trying to consolidate. So if you're from the area, please come. College of DuPage, Sunday, June 26th, in the cafeteria, 1 through 3 p.m. You'll find it on the BernieSanders.com website /events by the end of the day tomorrow, in case you can't remember this information now. Thank you.
Thank you. The revolution goes on. All right.
My name is Michael Goldstein. I'm from Oakland, California, and my head is swimming in two different realities right now. I'm really inspired and appreciative and been reminded of what can be done at the local level with energy and commitment and creativity. And the other reality is all the obstacles we face. One of the speakers said something about, what it takes to run an assembly race. Where I'm from, agribusiness and food manufacturing, big money, convinced the majority of California voters that putting a label on food, whether or not it had GMOs in it, was bad for them. I think Bernie called for a political revolution for really good, and talks about the billionaire class for a really good reason. I mean, the other reality for me is that these are people who have created war after war wherever they think their interests are even slightly threatened. Their government broke up the occupying campaigns, infiltrated the Black Panther Party, imprisoned and killed its members. Before that, the McCarthyist Red Scare, when there was a mass communist party with essentially Bernie's program. These are people who are not going to roll over and play dead because we have a constitutional amendment to take money out of politics or instant runoff voting or proportional representation. I actually think, and I want to know what you all think about this, that the way forward has to be doing what all the speakers have been telling us that you and your organizations have been doing, and while doing that, recruiting people to the idea of a real revolution. I don't think we can get revolutionary change without a nonviolent mass movement. When the next really big crisis comes, where we go into the streets like people did in Eastern Europe and the Arab Spring, and say, you know what? You can keep pulling the levers of power, but nothing's going to happen anymore because we're fed up with letting you rule us.
All right. Anyone have a response to that?
I think the question of an actual violent revolution, which I think it would have to be in the way you described it, is not actually on the agenda for our conversation today. I'm old enough to remember when people thought a socialist revolution was on the agenda in the United States by about 1975, maybe 77. And that's a topic for a different discussion. I think we do have to be cognizant, and I will tell you that the Working Families Party in New York has enough power that the forces that be unleashed the United States Southern District in a 9-month investigation of us that fortunately we were able to get pro bono representation worth $2 million, and we were able to emerge unscathed. They sicked a special prosecutor in Staten Island on us, and that thing has been going on for 5 or 6 years. These people do play for keeps. It's not like, you win some, you lose some. That's what we kind of thought at the beginning. Like, they usually win, and sometimes will win. Well, that's not really how it happens. They don't like it when you win anything. So I think we do have to be very serious. The one thing I do want to say that struck me in this is, we described a lot of good work going on the local level, and we need to up here acknowledge that doesn't add up to the political revolution that we're talking about at the national level. And I think that what I'm suggesting is we have got to have a higher level of unity and coordination that enables us to take the kind of work that we're doing at the state level and nationalize it and change the debate.
I agree with that, and I would only add to that what we're really talking about here is we have to maintain a vision of fundamental political and economic transformation for two reasons. One, because it's desperately and urgently needed right now to protect the planet and to keep people alive. I mean, I do think we're at a critical point in history, and that is very much necessary as our end goal. But secondly, because we're not going to keep people motivated and excited and willing to work with us on an agenda of incremental change. We're not going to, all of us are willing to knuckle down and do the hard work if we know that the end point is a better world and a better country and a better way of life for the generations that come after us. If we let go of that, as too many Democrats have, then we have no inspirational message and we're going to fall by the wayside.
Hi, my name is Joe Seaman. I'm a member of Working Families and a number of groups. I was a regional organizer with MoveOn.org's former network of local teams or councils. And a number of us have informally been working on a proposal which grew out of what MoveOn's network was going to try and do before they dropped it. And the idea is, instead of having a new national organization, is for a coalition of organizations that represent here, organizations that back Bernie and are part of this summit, to support a network, provide the support and the tools for a network of local teams that could be affiliates of any of these national organizations or could be totally independent, and to let them find local teams, find balance of organizing in their local, very hyper-local level or national level or in between, and for this network to provide a mapped out place that anybody can, wherever you are in America, can plug into your local political action and can provide standard website tools, a whole online toolkit for people to form their own local teams or connect to this network with standard tools such as an event calendar, map, a team roster, communication directory, and support for the type of things we do, such as canvassing, phone banking, flyering, etc., training materials, and again, something that we have to come, if you say one organization wants to be the leader, there's going to be like a hurt ego. We want to avoid that. Nobody wants to, I don't think we all want to create a new organization. And a number of us have been working on some proposals, and I've got a write-up of this, which is not very good, it's just a draft, if anybody wants. I just wanted to ask what you all think about that, and I'd be happy to work with anybody who's got an informal group of people who's move on to organize it.
Yeah.
And working on this proposal.
That's a great question and great idea. Does anyone have a particular kind of response or reaction to that, just about how people can plug in locally and ways to kind of organize and facilitate that?
And I just want to ask if this is something that national organizations would want to support this type of
I mean, I think that is definitely the intention, right, of many of the organizations, including the national organizations here, and sort of to Bob's point in particular about how we really nationalize what's happening, so that there are more ways for people to get involved at every level.
I mean, I don't want to monopolize the mic here, but I do feel like we need to experiment with new forms, right? I mean, one of the things that the Bernie campaign taught us, one of the things that somebody, I think Miles mentioned, Podemos in Spain, like there's a new kind of culture of decentralized self-organization, and I think that's good, needs to be encouraged. You know, and the challenge is how do you sort of amass that into a force that has the kind of power that we need at the national level that can challenge the biggest corporations on the planet, right? So I want to see some experiments along those lines within the framework that I'm kind of talking about.
Great, thank you, sir. So I just want to say one thing. We are actually at time now, but given the energy here and that there is a break right now. If you want to take the break, you can, but there's a lot of interest here. We're going to take a couple more questions and go at least another 10 minutes into the break. So for those who want to stay, go ahead.
Great. Thanks for everyone to be here. My name is Dr. Laura Chamberlain. I'm with Who's Counting Chicago, here in Chicago, and we are an election integrity group. And I want to thank my brother over here about reminding us that we have to maintain our street view. And you know the oligarchs mean business because of the TPP, right? The TPP is proof that the oligarchs mean business here around the world. Thank you very much. And it hasn't been mentioned once in this conference. So the third rail of electoral politics are the stolen elections. And Bernie got it stolen. I am so sorry, but he got it stolen. And what we need to learn from this is that we fight for every single vote. And we don't let them continue to count our votes in black boxes, in back rooms. We need to count our own votes. Paper ballots and hand counts. Thank you. Thank you. Like us and come and fight with us on who's counting Chicago. We're suing the Chicago Board of Elections. So I really, really want to encourage you on all of these fights. Not only do we have to get out the vote, we have to get in there and protect every single vote. Susan Garza at the 10th Ward here won last time. She won by 10 votes. But we fought for every single one of those. She would have lost if we walked away.
That's right. Thank you.
I'll just say that there's no question that the TPP needs to be a top priority, and I think that our campaign is very clear on that. The senator has laid that out as a top priority going into not only the platform but into the convention priorities. Defeating and killing the TPP must happen, and we must ensure that there is no lame duck action on the TPP. So I think that's been very clear, and I think that wasn't on the agenda for this conversation. But the fact that this issue is a priority and there is a strategy to make that happen. In terms of the electoral issues that were rightly raised, I think that Bernie has laid out a number of priorities for the Democratic Party to consider, and this is something that we're going to need the support of everyday people, activists, organizations, people in this room, and we're going to need your support also in the, and I failed to say it earlier, in the platform development process. These convenings is a place for people to go and testify, and at least the last one, we saw that there wasn't enough people. So I just really wanted to make sure that people know about these, that people are looking into these platform discussions, and that the voices of progressive and community-based organizations are being heard. Because this is a new aspect that they've integrated to the platform development process that wasn't in before, these listening sessions. So we want to make sure that our people are taking advantage of those.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir. I'm David Davids, Chicago resident, and I'm somebody who was very inspired by Bernie on the Sanders campaign, and been a supporter all along. I'm somebody who's always voted, but Senator Sanders kind of drew me more into the political process, and I've become involved with canvassing and phone banking and trying to get my friends and fellow citizens out to vote. But it seems to me that one of the biggest stumbling blocks that we've run into, and something that we've seen all along, has been this mass media opposition to Sanders and the mass media opposition to this revolution in this campaign. So what I'm wondering is, I, like a lot of my friends, have become kind of, these people who have a full-time job now on Facebook and on Twitter, trying to engage people in conversations and get the word out there and get people organized. But I just want to know from all of you, who are great activists, if you have any kind of media strategies that you could share, things that you have found to be effective, because clearly the corporations have this monster propaganda machine that has really posed a lot of opposition. So I'm just wondering if, things that you've seen that have been very effective, you can maybe share with us and let us know things we can do to be more successful in that area.
Well, I'll answer that. I think one of the things I've learned in the past year is that, if we're going to have a political revolution, we need a media revolution. We need to really overthrow the corporate media system, and that's easier said than done. So it means using, there was bloggers were supposed to be a kind of media revolution. I was part of that 10, 12 years ago, but that's also been co-opted to a certain extent. So it really, I think, is a matter of building alternative media at the national and the local level and strongly supporting it. And then going back to the days of, some of the people on this, at this dais are even older than me, and some of us remember, it's unthinkable, actually. And some of us actually remember some of the media strategy. Abby Hoffman was a genius at getting media. I mean, he was just brilliant at getting media. So we may also have to think about that. Dropping dollar bills on the stock exchange in Wall Street was one of the great actions of all time. So we also have to think in terms creatively about getting the attention of the corporate media, not because they like our message, they don't, but because they want to attract eyeballs, and that's the kind of thing that attracts eyeballs. So I think we have to attack it at all levels, structural and message.
Yeah, no doubt. Some of the greatest moments in the last 10, 20 years we created in the media, so great point. Maybe you have for one more question.
Hi, my name is Lisa from Daytona Beach, Florida. We are actually just getting the paperwork together for a 501c4 in Daytona Beach to try to start a progressive group.
Right.
Daytona Beach area progressive. Tough state for progressives, but we're trying. So what I'm running into is, Bernie's sending a message to us to say that he wants us to help him transform the Democratic Party. One of the things that comes up a lot of times, and even here at the summit, is the fact that there are a lot of independents who are supporting Bernie, a lot of MPAs. So when we go to our members and we try to ask them to run for office, of course, in Florida especially, there's not really a lot of independents or support for them. So in your experience and in your organizations, how do you approach the Bernie supporters who want to run for office, but they don't want to join the Democratic Party quite yet? I mean, do you think Bernie's calling for us to join the Democratic Party?
Good question.
I mean, we actually, a place that I would slightly differ with Bernie is I think the language of transforming the Democratic Party is not constructive language. We believe that we actually need an independent party that works inside of and outside of the Democratic Party, because our experience is you don't take over the Democratic Party takes over you. And in truth, like a lot of rank and file union members, for some for bad reasons, like on social issues and things like that, they hate the Democratic Party. And we like to say, look, this is the Working Families Party is an independent entity that fights for the interests of poor and working people, right? And by identifying it that way, I think you're able to build up an identity and a brand that says, look, what we think is when the pollsters do exit polls to Republicans, after they ask them who they voted for, they ask them, are you a Tea Party Republican? We believe that we need a brand that's the equivalent. Are you a Working Families Democrat? And we believe branding is really important. And it's an issue that all of us who are building independent political power are grappling with and have different views. But I do think the notion of building independent infrastructure, which is what everybody is saying, and you're inside and outside. And I think something that was said earlier about Maine, where I think the main identity of the independent organization is challenging corporate Democrats. We want to defeat right-wing Republicans, and there are many places where we're going to do that too, right, in swing districts. But the key piece of our identity is challenging corporate Democrats and polarizing inside the Democratic Party without the illusion that you're really going to take it over. So that's how we approach that question.
All right. Anybody else from the panel have any final responses to that question?
All right, so I'll take it with our experience in Maryland, because we've had a similar dynamic. I agree with what Bob said in terms of we need independence, but also being within, but also without the Democratic Party. But Maryland just so happens to be a very Democratic state, and I'm sure you're dealing with a similar dynamic. And we have a lot of people who are independents, registered. And so, I mean, the difficult decision we often have to make with our members and folks that want to run is like, we have two options, right? To build independent power in order to beat Democrats in the general election in our state, it just takes real intensive organizing and very exhaustive resources in order to do that. And you have to make an assessment, you know, are you able to overcome some of the barriers? Because part of the party problem in this country is a cultural one. It's just been beaten and beaten and beaten into people's heads, especially in communities like mine. Like that, you know, you're born in this place, you're born to this family, you're a Democrat. It's passed down family to family and everything like that. So it's a long-term problem that we have to address. And so in order to defeat that, you have to be either incredibly organized, incredibly resourced. And so, I mean, theoretically, that's very possible. And the alternative, at least, is, you know, I'm not the one that only believes that, like, you know, if a person is only running as a Democrat or just ran, you know, on the Democratic ticket, the Democratic primary, that you necessarily have to buy in to the corporate control of the Democratic Party, especially at the local level, because it's a whole different ballgame when you get very grassroots at the local level. And so, you know, keep your values, keep your message, who you are, but sometimes just make the strategic decision. And it's everybody's decision to make how they want to run.
Thank you, Larry. So I want to thank this fantastic panel that we had here today. And I just want to close by saying that, you know, the revolution is clearly happening and being organized at the local and state level. This has been a great discussion about how we take it further. Don't be afraid, make them afraid. All right, thanks everyone.